And President Biden delivering his second State of the Union address tonight and doing it for the first time in his presidency to a divided Congress.
Biden called for unity, but things got feisty when Biden called out Republicans for wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare.
Well, KCAL News political reporter was watching it all, and he is here with all the highlights and the Republican response.
And you know, there were some fireworks tonight. Some moments we were talking about just before we came on, Pat. The Republicans and Biden kind of having a real-time debate there. Yeah, going back and forth. All right, President Biden came out tonight trying to make his case that his administration is fighting inflation, taking on greedy corporations, and the president even took on a crowd of rowdy Republicans when things got tense tonight over possible cuts to Social Security and Medicare.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
President Biden making his entrance for his second State of the Union address. Two Californians once again seated behind him, but with one very big difference.
I start tonight by congratulating the 118th Congress and the new Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy.
With his address to a new divided Congress, President Biden called for unity.
Time and again, Democrats and Republicans came together to defend a stronger and safer Europe. You came together to pass once in a generation infrastructure law, building bridges connecting our nation and our people.
Just a few months from the midterms and now in the second half of his presidency, Mr. Biden said the country is rebuilding strong.
2 years ago, democracy faced its greatest threat to the Civil War, and today, though bruised, our democracy remains unbowed and unbroken.
In the audience for the president's speech, Monterey Park hero Brandon Say, who wrestled the gun away from the dance studio mass murderer.
He saved lives.
Also in attendance, the family of Tyree Nichols, the man who was beaten by Memphis police and later died from his injuries after a traffic stop. Biden calling once again for police reforms.
But what happened to Tyree in Memphis happens too often. We have to do better.
For much of the speech, Democrats cheered as the president talked about his accomplishments, and Republicans stayed silent. But then there was this reaction when the president was talking about the looming battle over the debt ceiling and Republican demands to make cuts. The topic went to Social Security.
Some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority. Let me give you, anybody who doubts it, contact my office. I'll give you a copy. I'll give you a copy of the proposal.
There was some bipartisan moments when the president talked about making more products in America and support for Ukraine. Biden also said his administration made great strides in controlling inflation and blamed corporations and energy companies for making massive profits while raising prices.
The idea that in 2020, 55 of the largest corporations in America, the Fortune 500, made $40 billion in profits and paid zero in federal taxes? Zero? Folks, it's simply not fair. But now, because of the law I signed, billion-dollar companies have to pay a minimum of 15%. God love them.
Delivering the Republican response, Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who was also former President Trump's press secretary.
From out-of-control inflation and violent crime to the dangerous border crisis and threat from China, Biden and the Democrats have failed you. They know it, and you know it. And it's time for a change.
Huckabee Sanders hit at President Biden on social issues.
At 40, I'm the youngest governor in the country. And at 80, he's the oldest president in American history. I'm the first woman to lead my state, and he's the first man to surrender his presidency to a woke mob that can't even tell you what a woman is. In the radical left's America, Washington taxes you and lights your hard-earned money on fire.
President Biden hoped to use tonight's speech to shore up his support for a possible run in 2024 and bolster his sagging poll numbers. He heads out to Wisconsin tomorrow to meet with union workers. So we'll see if any of that worked.
I noticed Antony Blinken, of course, in the audience, and he did bring up he talked about Xi Jinping, and he talked about the balloon.
Yeah, the balloon.
We've been talking about that for days, so I just had to mention it.
Right, it's true. He did bring it up. It was later in the speech, but you're right, Pat. I mean, it was something all we talked about for about a week, right? I mean, that balloon was very controversial, and he said he would, he promised to defend America. He did receive some criticism for waiting a bit to shoot that down and give the order to shoot it down. But he said he just didn't want it to, fall down, debris fall down on top of people or property. So, I guess it depends on who you talk to, right?
Yeah, speaking of that, thank you.
Thank you,
Tom. And our team coverage of the State of the Union address continues with Zev Yaroslavsky.
Zev is former LA County Supervisor and LA City Council member and currently the head of the Luskin School of Public Affairs at UCLA. Zev, first off, what was your biggest takeaway from the president's speech tonight?
Well, first of all, I'm not the head of the Luskin School at UCLA, so let me make that clear. I thought his speech was aimed at kitchen table issues. If you're looking at this through the lens of the 2024 presidential election, both Biden spoke to his base and to the suburban vote, and to the base that he needs to get reelected, and Governor Huckabee Sanders was speaking to her base, to the Republican base. She was speaking to the culture issues. Biden was speaking to the kitchen table issues, inflation, cost of living, things of that sort. And that's what the contest is going to be all about in 2 years. And I think you saw really that this is a curtain raiser for the president's re-election campaign, and Governor Sanders was the culture war message that has been characteristic of the Republican Party.
Well, Zev, you said it. The president's supporters really thought he came out very strong tonight. I'm going to ask you, did President Biden sound like a president who is going to run again in 2024?
Yeah, I thought he sounded like a president's going to run again. And if there's one phrase that came out of this, it's let's finish the job. Right. Finish the job reminds me of Lyndon Johnson's line after President Kennedy was assassinated. Let us continue. Finish the job means he wants to be there to finish the job, and the job may not be finished in 2 years. It may be finished in 6 years. I thought that was pretty clear that this was the first salvo in his re-election campaign.
Zev, Tom mentioned it in his report. There was uproar over President Biden's comments on the national debt and him accusing Republicans of wanting to sunset Medicare and Social Security. Do you think the two sides can come together on the issue?
Well, I think President Biden called them out on it and really shamed them into saying no, we're not. Senator Scott of the Republican campaign chairman, U.S. Senator Scott, had a proposal that would cut Social Security and Medicare and a lot of other entitlements, and so this wasn't something that President Biden made up out of whole cloth. It was a leader of the Republican Senate caucus was proposing it. Of course, it's embarrassing because cutting Medicare and cutting Social Security is a dead bang loser in this country. Republicans are also senior citizens, and so I think they want to run away from that issue as fast as possible. But I thought Biden. It was an ad lib kind of a moment. He called him on it, shamed him into it, and said, I like conversions. It's right there. I don't think there's going to be any bill that passes that cuts Social Security or Medicare, and I think it's a red herring for all sides.
All right. Well, Zev Yaroslavsky, as usual, we want to thank you for your insight tonight.
Good to be with you.
You, as always. Thank you.